Lena Daniels wasn't supposed to be here, not in this moment. She had spent most of her life tinkering with security systems, building firewalls, and tracking down digital criminals. But as the sun sank below the horizon, casting a pink-orange glow over the city, she found herself staring at an encrypted message on her screen that made her heart race. Her phone buzzed. She knew the number. It was from her old friend, the one person who could make her question every decision she'd ever made. "Hey, Lena," the voice on the other end said, grim but tinged with an undeniable sense of urgency. "I need your help. Something big is happening, and I can't explain much, but the quantum key has been stolen." Lena's fingers hovered above the keyboard. The quantum key. The device that, if used properly, could rewrite the very fabric of the virtual world. She had heard of it before, but only in hushed whispers in the corners of hacker forums. It was said to be the holy grail of digital manipulation, a tool that could control entire digital ecosystems, bend reality in ways that no one had even imagined. Her friend, Mechs, continued, his voice crackling with frustration. "Look, I know you're not in the game anymore. But you've got a unique set of skills, Lena. You can track it down. You need to." She didn't answer immediately, the weight of his words sinking in. The quantum key wasn't just a tool, it was a weapon, a Pandora's box waiting to be opened. And if it fell into the wrong hands, the consequences could be catastrophic. "I'm listening," she said, her voice steady, despite the butterflies in her stomach. Mechs gave her the rundown, piecing together the facts as best as he could. The quantum key had been stolen by a hacker collective called the Nexus. They were a shadowy group of elite hackers with access to technology and resources far beyond what most could imagine. They were calculating, efficient, and utterly ruthless. And now, they had the quantum key. The implications were terrifying. The Nexus could theoretically control entire systems, rewrite the rules of any virtual environment, even influence real-world events. The power to change anything. Max's voice shifted, betraying his concern. "They're playing a game, Lena. But this time, they're not just breaking in for fun. They've got the quantum key, and they know how to use it." Lena's mind raced. She wasn't just a cybersecurity expert, she was a former gamer champion, someone who had spent years mastering the complex virtual realms that most people only used for entertainment. She could track them down, but the question was, should she? But before she could process any of it, the call cut off. The line went dead. Lena stared at the screen in front of her, a twinge of unease creeping into her chest. The quantum key wasn't just some rare piece of tech. It was an enigma, a tool that, in the wrong hands, could fracture the balance between the virtual and the real. The moment she decided to get involved, the world around her shifted. She wasn't just a bystander anymore. She was the one who would have to track down the hackers, face off against them in a digital realm she had long abandoned. A few hours later, Lena found herself at her workstation, adjusting her glasses as she plugged into the system that would allow her to enter the virtual space. She was about to embark on a journey through a world that was as much a part of her past as it was her future. A world where reality was fluid, and everything, from the buildings to the laws of physics, could be rewritten at a whim. The first step was always the hardest, logging into the virtual world. A rush of digital noise and shifting lights greeted her as she connected her mind to the system. She was no longer just Lena Daniels, the cybersecurity expert. She was now a player in a game far bigger than anything she had experienced before. As her senses adjusted to the virtual space, she marveled at the world around her. The digital city sprawled out before her, skyscrapers of gleaming glass, shimmering highways that glowed with neon lights, and people moving through the streets, their avatars blending into the bustling virtual world. This was a place where people lived, worked, and played, a simulation so advanced it was almost indistinguishable from reality. And yet, it was still a game that Lena had mastered years ago. But this time, the stakes were higher. Much higher. Lena's pulse quickened as she navigated the complex digital terrain, her avatar slicing through layers of code and security. She had a mission: find the quantum key before it fell into the wrong hands. In the heart of the virtual world, she discovered a place that looked like a high-end casino, filled with avatars dressed in opulent clothes, flashing their digital wealth. This was the hub where the Nexus operated, their base of operations. The only problem was, Lena wasn't sure who she was dealing with. She had to approach cautiously. At first, she was just another anonymous figure in the digital crowd, weaving through avatars with practiced ease. But then, a sudden shift in the atmosphere caught her attention. A distortion rippled through the virtual space, and a low hum echoed through the area. It was as if the very environment was shifting, adapting to the presence of something, or someone. Lena's instincts kicked in. She wasn't alone. The Nexus had already noticed her. The first encounter came sooner than Lena expected. She barely had time to react before an avatar approached her, its movements too smooth, too precise. It was a figure in a long black coat, the avatar's face hidden behind a digital mask. "You're not supposed to be here," the figure said, its voice devoid of warmth. Lena smiled wryly. "Guess I missed the memo." The figure didn't flinch. "You're hunting for the quantum key, aren't you? You know you're playing a dangerous game." Lena's fingers twitched, itching to hack into the system, but she held back. This wasn't just about getting the key anymore, it was about survival. If the Nexus caught wind of her presence, it would be game over. But the figure wasn't going to let her off that easy. "I'm just here for a chat," Lena said. "Maybe you can point me in the right direction?" The figure's digital mask flickered for a moment, and a low chuckle echoed from the avatar's voice. "We don't play games like that. You're either with us or against us." Before Lena could respond, the figure vanished into the crowd, disappearing like smoke. She didn't need to be told twice. The Nexus wasn't interested in games. They had their own rules, and they played for keeps. Lena had to stay one step ahead, or risk being lost in the digital maze forever. Lena's search led her through a maze of virtual realms, each more bizarre than the last. But the deeper she went, the more she realized that this was no ordinary digital world. It was a reflection of the real one, yes, but it was also something else, something far more powerful, far more unpredictable. The further Lena ventured, the more she uncovered about the Nexus's true intentions. They weren't just after power. They were after control. The quantum key, it turned out, had the potential to bridge the gap between the virtual world and the real one, creating a unified system where everything, people, places, memories, could be altered at will. The Nexus's goal wasn't just to steal the key. They wanted to reshape the entire world. Lena's heart pounded as she absorbed the implications. The Nexus wasn't just after the quantum key for its potential to alter virtual worlds, they wanted to merge those worlds with the real one. They wanted a system that was interconnected, that could bend the laws of nature and control humanity's very existence. She felt the floor beneath her virtual avatar shift, a slight glitch in the matrix that signaled something far bigger was happening. She wasn't just tracking them anymore, she was being pulled into something much darker, much more dangerous. Her mind raced as she processed the revelations. Every corner she turned, every digital structure she passed, was part of their larger plan. The Nexus had already infiltrated every aspect of the simulation, manipulating its very code, tweaking it to suit their needs. But what if that manipulation had already bled into reality? What if the quantum key could, in fact, change the world they lived in, shifting it into something unrecognizable? A rush of cold panic gripped her. She needed to stop them, and fast. But stopping them meant confronting the source of their power, the quantum key. If she couldn't find it, if she couldn't destroy it, then they would have the upper hand. The Nexus would control everything. Lena quickened her pace, moving through the virtual streets with purpose. Her mind raced, calculating her next move, but it wasn't long before a familiar figure appeared in her path. It was the same black-coated avatar from before. The one that had warned her off, the one who seemed to know exactly who she was. "You really think you can stop this?" the figure asked, its voice just as cold as the first time they spoke. Lena's stomach dropped. She didn't want to fight. Not yet, anyway. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to stop this madness. Madness? This is the future. The figure took a step closer, its mask flickering for a moment before a new face appeared on the digital screen. It was Zen, the leader of the Nexus. His smile was wide, unsettling. This is the evolution of humanity, Lena. A merging of worlds. There's no going back from this. Lena's breath caught in her throat. You can't seriously believe that. You want to rewrite the rules of everything. You're playing God. Zen's smile didn't falter. You're too short-sighted, Lena. The world is broken. We're fixing it. What's the point of living in a reality that limits you? This key, it's not just a tool. It's salvation. She swallowed hard, the weight of his words pressing down on her. She couldn't let him win. Not like this. You're wrong, she said firmly. It's not salvation. It's domination. Zen's avatar flickered again, the digital mask changing back to the shadowed figure. Then prove it, he said, stepping aside. Come and find the key. You won't be able to stop it. We're already inside your world. And with that, he disappeared. Lena was left standing in the virtual space, her mind reeling. The implication was clear: Zen and the Nexus weren't just trying to control the virtual world. They had already infiltrated the real one. If they could control both, they could rule over everything. She had no choice. She had to find the quantum key, before it was too late. The deeper Lena journeyed into the simulation, the more warped and strange the virtual world became. Cities shifted before her eyes, their buildings bending and warping like clay in the hands of a child. Streets no longer followed any logic. She found herself caught in a dizzying labyrinth, where every turn led her back to the same place. It was as though the environment itself was reacting to her presence, testing her, throwing obstacles in her way, and then, the world fractured. A sudden pulse of energy rippled through the entire system, throwing Lena off balance. She struggled to stay grounded, her mind battling against the chaos around her. The once pristine digital space was now crumbling, glitches rippling across the skyline like lightning. Her vision blurred as the world she had known began to distort. It wasn't just the virtual world that was in danger. The Nexus had triggered something far worse. The two realms, the real and the virtual, were bleeding into one another. Lena's body was suddenly pulled into a new dimension, a strange amalgamation of the digital world and reality itself. She was no longer simply an observer. She could feel the weight of the ground beneath her feet. She could see the flicker of neon lights and the distortion of familiar objects around her, all of it warping and reshaping as though reality itself was being rewritten. She stumbled forward, trying to make sense of the disorienting landscape. It was as if she was in a dream, one that had no rules. People, or, rather, avatars, walked past her, oblivious to the shifting nature of the world around them. But Lena knew the truth. The simulation had crossed over. The boundaries had broken down. This wasn't just a game anymore. This was reality. Lena's pulse quickened. She needed to find the quantum key. But where could it be? And how could she get to it before the Nexus did? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sudden appearance of a figure, one that wasn't just another avatar. This one felt different. More real. She couldn't quite place it, but something about this presence sent a chill down her spine. It was the professor. Professor Axelson. The creator of the quantum key. His avatar flickered as though it was glitching, half-formed, like a broken image. You've come, Lena. I knew you would, his voice echoed, disembodied in the chaotic space. Lena couldn't help but take a step back. Professor, what is this? What's happening? This isn't the simulation anymore. This is real. The professor's image shifted, becoming clearer. His eyes met hers. "It was always meant to be this way," he said softly. "The quantum key is the key to everything. To both worlds. It was designed to merge them, to bring harmony. But the Nexus, they've twisted it. They've made it a weapon." Lena frowned. "Why didn't you stop them? You created it. You must have known what could happen." "I tried to," Axelson replied. "But once the key was activated, it became something beyond even my control. It was never meant to merge two worlds. It was meant to enhance them. But now," his voice trailed off. "Now, it's too late." Lena clenched her fists. "There has to be a way to fix this. I can stop them. I can destroy it." Axelson shook his head. "The key is more than just a tool. It's a part of you now, Lena. You were connected to it the moment you accessed the system. You always have been. To destroy it would mean destroying everything, including yourself." Her heart raced. She had always been connected to the system, to this virtual realm. It had been a part of her life for so long. But now, it was tied to her very existence. How could she destroy something that had become a part of her? Something that held the key to her own survival, but there was no time to think about that now. The Nexus was still out there, and they were closer than ever to achieving their goal. "I don't have a choice," Lena said, determination burning in her eyes. "I'll find the key. And I'll stop them." With that, the professor's image flickered one last time and disappeared, leaving Lena alone in the fractured virtual space. She steeled herself, ready for the final confrontation. The hunt for the quantum key wasn't over. It was just beginning. Lena took a deep breath and steadied herself. The professor's warning echoed in her mind, but she couldn't afford to second-guess herself now. The Nexus had already taken the first step in their twisted plan to merge the virtual world with reality. If they succeeded, there would be no undoing the chaos that followed. They needed the quantum key to reach their goal, and Lena had to make sure they didn't get their hands on it. As she moved through the shifting landscape, the virtual world felt less like a game and more like a nightmare. Nothing seemed stable anymore. Buildings swayed like they were on the edge of collapse. The streets were a kaleidoscope of blurring pixels, like a poorly rendered dream. Reality, it seemed, was beginning to break down, not just the simulation, but the very world Lena had once known. She paused at an intersection, her mind racing. If the professor was right, and the quantum key was a part of her now, she had to figure out how to control it. The idea of having that kind of power, of being able to shape both worlds, was overwhelming. She didn't feel ready. She didn't even know if she wanted that kind of responsibility. But there was no choice. She had to make it work. A sudden sound, a crackling of static, drew her attention. A figure appeared in the distance, silhouetted against the flashing lights of the distorted city. As the figure drew closer, Lena could make out the distinctive black coat and digital mask. "Zen, did you really think you could escape?" Zen's voice was as cold as before, his eyes gleaming behind the mask. "The key was always meant for someone like you, Lena. We were waiting for you." Lena squared her shoulders, her fists clenching. "I'm not going to let you do this. Not to me, not to anyone." Zen's avatar tilted its head, a hint of amusement flickering in the masked face. "You misunderstand. We're not the ones doing something wrong here. You think you're stopping us, but all you're really doing is delaying the inevitable. The worlds were always meant to merge. It's natural. A progression." Lena's pulse quickened, a fire igniting in her chest. "You can't just rewrite reality like that. People won't be free, they'll be enslaved. You'll have total control." "Control?" Zen repeated, almost with a laugh. "There is no control. There is only freedom. Freedom to reshape the world, freedom to live in a place where limitations no longer exist. No more war, no more hunger, no more suffering. All of it, gone. We're giving people the life they should have had all along. Lena shook her head, disbelief flooding her. That's not freedom, Zen. That's tyranny. You can't force people into a world they don't choose. It's wrong. Zen's face darkened, and for a moment, the mask flickered, showing a flash of real emotion, impatience, frustration, maybe even anger. You're stuck in your old ways of thinking, Lena. You can't see the bigger picture. You're blinded by your ideals. He stepped forward, his presence suddenly overwhelming. But you'll see soon enough. You'll understand. You'll help us build the new world. And if you won't do it willingly, well, we'll make sure you join us anyway. Lena's breath caught. I'm not afraid of you. Oh, but you should be. Zen's avatar raised a hand, and with a snap of his fingers, the world around them began to distort again. The ground cracked, buildings twisted, and the entire city seemed to warp under his command. It was as though the digital landscape was bending to his will, reshaping itself like clay in the hands of a sculptor. Lena staggered, feeling the world shift beneath her. This wasn't just a game anymore. The lines between the two worlds were collapsing, and the power Zen wielded over the simulation felt very, very real. She tried to steady herself, but the pull of the distorted reality was overwhelming. Her connection to the system, the quantum key, it was too strong now. Too dangerous. Zen's laughter echoed around her. You can't escape, Lena. You're already part of it. You are the key. Lena closed her eyes for a moment, trying to center herself. She couldn't let Zen win. She wouldn't. She forced her focus inward, reaching for the thread that connected her to the system. She could feel it there, pulsating like a heartbeat, the quantum key, thrumming beneath her skin. With a deep breath, Lena let herself sink into the connection, letting the power of the key flow through her. She wasn't sure what would happen, what she was supposed to do, but she had to trust herself. She had to trust that she could control it. The world around her seemed to pause, as though the very fabric of the simulation held its breath. Lena's heart pounded in her chest as she reached out, grasping the key. And then, just as quickly, she pulled it, yanking it back from the edge of collapse, from Zen's grasp. A pulse of energy erupted from her, rippling outward like a shockwave. Zen's avatar faltered, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. The world around them wavered, shifting and glitching as if it were uncertain of its own reality. But Lena could feel it now. The key was no longer something she used. It was a part of her, and in that moment, she was able to reshape the world around her. Lena raised her hands, and the distortions around them began to stabilize. Buildings righted themselves. Streets reformed. The ground beneath her feet grew solid again. She was no longer a player in a game, she was controlling the very rules of existence. But there was a cost. She could feel it. The longer she held onto the key, the more her connection to reality was stretched. Stop it. Zen hissed, his voice turning to a growl. You're destroying everything. You don't know what you're doing. Lena's jaw clenched. I know exactly what I'm doing. With a sudden surge of energy, she pushed back against him, forcing the simulation to collapse around Zen's avatar. A blinding flash of light erupted, and when it faded, Zen was gone. The world around Lena seemed to freeze for a moment, hanging in the balance. For the briefest second, everything was still, and then, it shattered. The world around her cracked open, the digital world splintering into 1,000 jagged pieces. The real world began to bleed through, and Lena felt herself pulled between two dimensions. Her body tensed, fighting against the pull of the key, but it was too strong. Too powerful, she gasped, her breath coming in ragged, shallow pulls. Her vision blurred as she teetered on the edge of both worlds. No, she whispered, fighting against the pull. I can't, but it was too late. The collapse was inevitable. She felt herself fall, through the fractures, through the void, through the space between the virtual and the real, and then, darkness.